And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 111. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Conor Ryan. Conor, how you doing?
Evan, I'm doing well. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Last night, I finished up The Wire, as I tweeted this morning. Great show. I know you were a big fan of The Wire. You watched it. You were someone that helped me kind of get into it. Great show. So I'm doing great. I can't recommend it enough. As I said, it's like a novel on television.
Very uplifting ending.
Oh, very uplifting.
Yes.
Very uplifting ending. Very real ending. The beauty of that show is it's so it's just realism. It's not, there's no movie hero type stuff. It's very just seems very real. So great show. Watch it if you have HBO. Highly recommend it. Are you watching anything right now that's particularly?
I'm in like a bit of a drought right now because I was watching Better Call Saul, which you haven't watched. Fantastic.
I have to first watch Breaking Bad, and then
that's important. You should probably watch that first, but highly recommend both shows. But now I'm in kind of a stretch where I'm not invested in anything, which is kind of good. Like, I don't want to jump immediately into something after being so engrossed in one show. So I'm taking my time. I'll rewatch like The Office or Curb or Veep or something like that just to have on in the background. I'm not going to dive right into a show. There's just too many shows out right now. Like, I don't want to. It's like when you go and there's like 5 different Marvel shows or anything like that. Like, I don't have time for this. I can't watch this. Can't watch Baby Yoda on his latest hijinks. I don't have enough time in the day. So I take my time, pick one show, and then commit to it.
There's too much going on, like show-wise. There's so many good ones. It's like Stranger Things and Ozark and just all these different shows. And you're like, how do I keep up with this? And the Game of Thrones and like all these current stuff. And like, I still got to watch The Sopranos. I've still got to do all these, watch all these other shows before I touch any new stuff. So I think my next order of business, I have to finish Ozark. That's I have to watch season 7 of Ozark. And then I'm probably going to go to Breaking Bad, potentially. If anyone has any recommendations,
go wrong.
Send them. Yeah,
yes.
But I think that's a pretty safe bet, so to speak, which we'll get to later. But we do have to talk Bruins today. And this is one of our final summer shows, because it's September 1st. We're recording this on September 1st. So this is the month the training camp begins. This is hockey, preseason hockey at least, will be played this month. So this is one of our final let's get through the summer type shows.
Thank God.
I know. Thank God. We'll start with this. And you wrote a column about this on bostonsportsjournal.com the other day about Pavel Zacha, which we talked a lot about when they first traded for him. And then obviously, there were bigger things to talk about like Bergeron and Krejci. But we kind of hinted at this earlier in the offseason. But it feels like Pavel Zacha could be a good candidate for a guy who could get a little bit of a scoring surge.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when we say scoring surge, I think that
100 points.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be the Jake DeBrusk 27 goals per game, what have you. But
yes.
I think when you look at where he can grow his game, he's already a guy that I think, even though he's got that label of being a guy that taken 6th overall, he hasn't lived up to maybe that hype. But all right, he's a good two-way guy, very good in transition, can give you 30 plus points, but it's not without, out of the realm of possibility that he's a guy that can build his game towards being a guy that gives you 45 points. And now, is that a breakout? Is that a surge? Maybe not. But in terms of what his role will be in terms of early on in the top 6, most likely next to Bergeron and DeBrusk, or eventually further down the road where he might be in an even more important spot in terms of where they need him to thrive on that third line, most likely with guys like Coyle or Smith or Lysell or whoever it is. If he's a guy that can take that next step forward, it'd be huge for the team. And I don't think that just comes down to the fact that, all right, yeah, he was in the top 6 with New Jersey. He played a little bit with Nico Hischier. New Jersey, not a great team. And also Hischier, first overall pick, can be a good player, but I wouldn't put him as like a high-end top 6 right now, at least, right? Like I wouldn't put him in that label in terms of where he is. So if it's either the first few months of the year where he's playing next to Bergeron, or just the fact that, he could be getting some time on the power play, especially early on, he should naturally have his numbers jump up a little bit because of that. But I think what encouraged me the most about when both Don Sweeney and Zacha himself were talking about where he has more to give, both of them right away said it's shooting. It's the fact that he doesn't get a lot of shots off. And if you look at some of his goals he scored in years past, he's got a heavy shot. Like he's got a few
yes.
of those where it's like, oh, all right, well that just, sails through a mass of bodies and just gets to the back of the net. And I think wasn't this past year, but during the COVID shortened year, the 56 game season, he had 17 goals and I think 52 games. So he has the potential to be a 20 goal scorer if he just gets more shots off. But he's a guy that I did the little number crunching, shout out Natural Stat Trick. So there were 387 forwards who played 500 minutes of 5-on-5 ice time last year. And Zacha was 240th in shots per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 play. Not great.
Not the best.
Guys who had a higher shot rate include Trent Frederick and Nick Foligno.
Ooh.
So not exactly guys in terms of maybe guys you want to have a high shot volume considering, where their kind of role is in the lineup. You look at where Zacha is, you look at the potential of that shot that he has, the talent that he has, and the fact that he's going to get probably better opportunities in Boston to kind of showcase that offensive skill. It's definitely one thing where it seems like it's good that both management, I imagine coaches, and Zacha himself are on the same page in terms of getting more shots off. And again, it's one thing to say that during the preseason or during the offseason, another thing to kind of translate that into game settings. We've talked about that with a guy like McAvoy for years now in terms of getting more shots off, and it's still a gradual process. You don't naturally just go into a year and average, 5-6 shots per game, but at least it seems like that's an area where the Bruins see a pretty clear avenue of where they could probably get more offense out of a guy like Zacha.
I would love to see where Craig Smith ranks in the shots per 60 because, that dude's
I believe he was very high up there.
Puck from everywhere. I'll say this, again, just going off points, Zacha's points have steadily increased every year, 24, 25, 25, 32, 35, 36. So, people say he's inconsistent, but at least it rises every year. Maybe you think obviously now he has to go up. Obviously, I joke about that. I don't think that is a amazing stat for in favor of Zacha. But I will say, if anyone's to benefit from the Marchand's injury to start the year, Zacha. It's Zacha. It's most likely gets put with Bergeron. That's like logically, as you said, you should just by being there increase your point production. And then also, again, on that third line with what we presume to be Charlie Coyle and Craig Smith, that's a damn good third line. Like that third line should produce. And Zacha, as you said, shooting more, but also Zacha's good at getting to the net. Big dude. Like that's the other thing is like, he's got everything going for him. I think that's why New Jersey fans and the Devils were so disappointed was like, he has all the tools. Like that's a hockey player right there. That's like that he should be a lot better than he is. And I know Bruins fans kind of cringe because there's a lot of forwards on the Bruins core who like have that exact same problem of you should be a lot better than you are. But again, I think all signs point to the situation that he's in should benefit a guy like Zacha. Now, speaking of New Jersey Devils or former New Jersey Devils, there are two older players, washed up is kind of mean. I feel bad saying that because Yandle's older. Subban's 33, right? Subban's relatively kind of young.
Yeah, it's just
both are over the hill. Both over the hill players. Keith Yandle and PK Subban are free agents, and the Bruins are going to be missing Brandon Carlo to begin the, or not Brandon Carlo, excuse me, Matt Grzelcyk and Charlie McAvoy to begin the year. They will have Brandon Carlo, but they'll be missing those two to begin the year. And we said, I said this, I think we both said this around free agency time, like they got to go out and solidify the depth, at least on the right side. And the only move they made was Conor Carrick, who it's a deal between the AHL and the NHL. So is it the right? Would you put Keith Yandle or PK Subban on the Bruins? Would you give them a PTO? Because for many years now we've heard this about Keith Yandle. Oh, he's going to be a Bruin. Oh, they got to get him on the Bruins, the hometown kid. Do you see either of those two making sense?
I don't think I do. I think both guys would be great to have in the room. I think like if you just had Keith Yandle around would be fantastic entertainment in terms of
content would be unbelievable.
He's a great guy, very funny dude. But I think when you just look at this overall depth chart in terms of, and I say depth chart, people are going to be like, well, all right, you're missing McAvoy and Grzelcyk to start there. You need bodies. True. But I think when you look at what the Bruins have in terms of they're starting 6 guys to open the year plus guys they have in the reserves. I think they'd rather roll with what they have as opposed to seeing what a, 35, 36-year-old Yandle who, is as advertised in terms of what he can bring offensively, but in his own zone, kind of rough. And kind of the same thing with Subban. Both those guys are, if they're your third pairing guys, you give them very sheltered minutes. they can somewhat be effective. But I look at where the Bruins are and the guys that you're going to have coming back in a few months in McAvoy and Grzelcyk. Seems like you're just kind of making a log jam in terms of, trying to accommodate these two veteran guys on PTOs to see if they work out. Whereas you can just, I think, roll with, guys like Zaboral and Sean and even Carrick. You have that Kai Wiesman, who's coming from Germany, who really don't know that much about, but I imagine he's going to be in the mix. We'll see how he does during training camp. But I think if you're the Bruins, you'd rather roll the dice over this kind of short-term gap between McAvoy and Grzelcyk being back. I think you'd rather see what you have in these younger players, see what you have in a guy like a Sean who should be getting some more reps, see what Wiesman or Carrick can give you, as opposed to placing your bets on kind of a older veteran guy that you kind of know, the book's out on them, what their strengths and weaknesses are. But in terms of, I think, what the Bruins just need in the short term, which is just guys that can eat up minutes, do their job, be responsible in their own end, and kind of keep the overall zone defense structure afloat. I'd rather you keep guys in house probably and look at those as opposed to guys like Subban and Yandle, who again, great guys, had very, very great careers, but where they kind of fit and where their strengths are, it doesn't seem like it matches with what the short-term need is for the Bruins this year, even if it would be, again, fantastic theater just having both those guys in the room. But
amazing for content. By the way, both those guys would be fabulous analysts at TNT or ESPN or whoever.
Yes.
I wouldn't go near Yandle solely because, again, I don't love his game where it is now. I don't really love where either of them are at, but you look at the left side, you've got enough there, right? Lindholm, Forbert, Riley, Zaboral, Ashan, and that's without Grzelcyk, right? You're fine on the left side, but the right side's a little different. Again, right now without McAvoy, you have Carlo, Clifton, and then Carrick. I'm not missing anybody there, right? Those are the three on the right side. So again, I'm not saying they should do it, but I don't think I'd be opposed to, hey, taking a flyer on PK Subban. Something there. He's 33. He did have 21 points last year. Again, points are not everything. His defensive game is completely cratered. There's a lot there that I wouldn't love, but if you want a veteran presence there who you can maybe rely on every couple games or so, maybe not the worst thing. Because again, they don't have any other opportunities right now. So it's not like you're, misleading them or something like that. They're not signing these big deals. So again, a guy like Subban, I don't know, be interested. So, I mean, again, you're not expecting much.
Yeah.
You're taking a flyer, basically. I don't think it's a huge commitment. And there's no one on the right side who you're really stifling at the moment. Like, again, if you put Keith Yandle in over Jakob Zaboral or Jack Ashan, it's like, well, why would you do that? Like, you want to develop players. That's the wrong way to do it. But you don't really have anybody else on that right side, at least right now, that's really ready to go in and compete for a team that's going for the cup. By the way, Subban could go in and absolutely stink. And that would be that, right? But again, I wouldn't be opposed to it. Not going to sit here and endorse it, but I also wouldn't be completely opposed to that, solely because I think some depth on the right side wouldn't hurt them. But again, I mean, I guess it's kind of a good problem to have if Subban just was way over expectations. McAvoy comes back and suddenly you have McAvoy, Carlo, and Subban, and then you have Clifton. Is like the 7th D again. I mean, again, that's probably not what would happen. I don't see them doing either of these moves, but I don't know.
I think the one thing that will be an interesting kind of domino effect is just seeing, especially early on, how a guy like Zaboral fares, not only just in terms of if he can be an everyday NHLer, but I think he saw it last year that he's capable of playing on the right sides. So I think in a perfect world, it's all right. He slots in on the right side with Riley or Forbert, whoever it is, kind of on that second or third DP to start the year. And if you have McAvoy and Grzelcyk back and you get eventually a spot where you can keep Zaboral at that third pairing right shot guy and are on the right side, that's a good problem to have if it kind of comes down to him and Clifton kind of battling for those minutes. It's good when you have a competition like that with two guys who in spurts look like, very effective, regular, everyday NHL players. So I think that's their game plan going into it. But yeah, if he struggles to open the year, I mean, he's coming off ACL surgery, that's when things maybe could get a little dicey, because he's a guy that, as much as you don't want to put a lot of expectations on a guy who was good last year, but in a very small sample size, Zaboral taking another step forward, or at least keeping up that level of play he showed last year, is going to be huge for this team, especially in the early going. How
about those PK Subban Bruins Winter Classic jersey sales? That would be those would go right off the racks. That would
absolutely.
That'd be one of the most obscure jerseys you get. Like, remember when PK Subban was a Bruin? Speaking, by the way, of veterans who are a little over their prime, not quite in it anymore. Nick Foligno. I saw a tweet. I don't remember who tweeted it, so I can't credit it. But someone tweeted recently, they were like, buying NHL 23 solely so I can trade Nick Foligno. And I got a kick out of it. It was mean, but it was a funny tweet. It was a funny tweet. I got to give it. I forget who it was. So I'm sorry for whoever it was because I really don't remember.
Someone's irate watching.
Someone is pissed. But someone did tweet that. At least I'm not like saying it, claiming like, I'm not just saying it. I'm at least crediting someone for tweeting it. So I'll give them that. But is it surprising that nothing's taking place on that front?
I think so, in terms of just where you look at the clear need for the Bruins to clear cap space, and what was going to be probably the easiest avenue was probably going to be a buyout situation. Because I think you look at it, right? All right, you want to keep Foligno because you still think he has something left in the tank, which seems to be what they're thinking. I mean, he's a guy that, again, I don't think you can question his work ethic or his ability or his willingness to make plays. It's kind of like Backus, right? Where I don't think his thing was ever about motivation or anything like that. Great guy to have in the room, great veteran leader, awesome guy. But in terms of the production on the ice, sooner or later you need it to show up. So for the Bruins, I could see their line of thinking in terms of, all right, last year was kind of a lost year, dealt with injuries early on that kind of hampered him, wasn't able to get off to the stretch that he wanted. Obviously, I think probably disagreed about where he was deployed last year on the depth chart, even though I don't know really if he is moving up this year, if he starts the year with the NHL ranks. But I also think where you're the Bruins, all right, you want to give this guy another chance, but sooner or later you do have to clear that cap space. And whether it's, all right, you don't want to buy out Foligno now because you want to see what he has. But if that leads to a situation where then later on you have to move a guy like Riley, for example, all right, well, like it's one of those ones where Riley clearly has flaws. I think some Bruins fans aren't thrilled with, his level of play last year, but he's still an everyday NHL guy. Like, who knows, once McAvoy and Grizzlick are back, maybe he does end up on the outside looking in, and then it just makes sense to trade him. But he's not a guy that I think you're trading just for the sake of doing it, just because you want this guy who was playing at a 40-point pace during his first, stint with Boston. There's not a guy you just move just for the sake of doing it. He's still a useful NHL asset, whereas Foligno right now, you look at just his level of production the last couple of years, you kind of have to make that case in terms of how valuable is he to this overall lineup. So I think it's definitely surprising the fact that they didn't, buy him out during the window that they had. It's clear they want to see what else they have in him. But I think when you just look at this lineup and the amount of younger players who are trying to, chomping at the bit to get in that, especially that fourth line role, I think we've talked about this multiple times already, Evan, but I think the best case scenario for the Bruins lineup wise is you go into the second half of the year and your fourth line is all young, hungry guys like a Frederick or a Beecher or a Steen, McLaughlin. I think that's the best case scenario in terms of giving you the highest ceiling and the most potential in terms of what you want on your checking unit. And right now you have guys like, Foligno or even Nosek who are in that spot who are probably going to get the first reps. And listen, if Foligno puts it all together this year and is an impact player and can give you 10, 15 goals, that would be fantastic. The Bruins would love to have that. They signed him for a reason. Great guy to have. You can tell a lot of the veterans, a lot of the younger players love him, but you can't have him score just 2 goals in a year. You just can't have it. That's that. End of the day, it comes down to the production, right?
And the candy corn. I mean, come on.
Yes.
This, excusable. No, and I will say, you look at what's been the main message out of Causeway Street this summer. They want to develop younger talent on the third and fourth lines, mainly the fourth lines. They want these kids to play. They want Jim Montgomery to be better with younger players than Bruce Cassidy was. The fourth line is the perfect place right now, to, as you said, to try out those younger guys, whether it be a Mark McLaughlin or an Oscar Steen or a Johnny Beecher, though that's your area for that. And you have a guy like Nick Foligno in there making $3.8 million a year in that spot, and he's not producing. And again, if he was making that money and he was a solid second or third liner and you could, plug him in, then sure. Right. But he's just taking space on the fourth line. I think that's the issue. And it kind of goes against everything they're saying. And I get that, they want to kind of see it through. They want to see if he's someone. They also might say, hey, look, with the new coach coming in, we want guys who are good in the room. Maybe that's the legit thing that they're looking at. But from a lineup perspective, from an on ice perspective, it doesn't make a lot of sense that he's still there, solely because that's where you should be kind of harvesting these younger players and kind of getting them used to the NHL, not taking up space with guys like Foligno and Nosek. And by the way, there are probably teams out there who Foligno could fit in somewhere in the lineup. Nosek for sure, right? Nosek could go to a team and be a solid fourth line center, maybe on a team that's even competing, right? Like a team that isn't super focused on developing younger talent. But the Bruins at the moment are in those spots. And they don't have, by the way, the Bruins don't have a lot of lineup spots to really like develop young talent. You know, like the top six is pretty much taken. The third line looks pretty solidified as of right now, unless things change. The fourth line is the spot for that. And again, guys like Foligno being there doesn't make a ton of sense. But one question that we were at dinner last night. Me and you and Ty Anderson and Nicole Yang of Boston Globe, which covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. And a question we were debating kind of. We could have honestly made that the podcast.
Just a roundtable.
Just a roundtable discussion over great Mexican food at the Burrow Bar in Brookline. But the question came up of, are we underrating the Bruins? Because there's been a lot of hate for the Bruins this year, right? There's a lot of some people saying they're not going to make the playoffs. It's kind of all over the place, but there's some negativity. And we were kind of discussing, and we'll discuss it here, like, are we underrating the Bruins? You know, is there a chance they come into this year and people are like, damn, they're actually not bad?
Yeah, I think it's always a tricky situation in terms of, like, especially before a year starts, you know, having a optimistic, a cheery outlook, or however you want to phrase it, because then people think you're either just kind of homering it up, or you're hoping they're good, which it's our job. I do hope the Bruins are good. That makes things a lot better.
Makes this way easier.
Yes, but I do think when you just look at the makeup of this team, and yes, it's going to be tough in the start of the year. And again, it's like every NHL team, a whole lot can go wrong. If Marchand struggles to recover from that hip surgery, if guys like Bergeron and Krejci, who are up there in age, if they have an injury, or they start hitting a plateau or a cliff and their game kind of takes a downturn, yeah, you're in trouble. It's like any other team. If Nathan McKinnon and Gabriel Landeskog and those guys got hurt last year, as has happened in years past, or their goalies didn't stay healthy, then yeah, they would have also had some issues too. Every team has that situation. If Andrei Vasilevsky blew out his Achilles, the Lightning would be screwed too. So you need a lot to go right for you. But I think when you just look at this team, this is something we talked about before, where you look at this lineup, they already have a very good top six. You could make it case the best top six when healthy that they've had in years, in terms of Krejci, Hall, Pastrnak as your second line. How many years have the Bruins been kind of buoyed by that first line? And then you had like the second line of Krejci and insert winger here, right? Like Peter Cehlarik, all these other guys.
Nick Ritchie.
Yeah, you have a legit top six now. You have a third line that, even though I think guys like Coyle and Smith and what have you are, can be kind of divisive, pretty good third line guys. Like, considering, again, you look at where that lineup was a few years ago when it was like Jacob Forsbacka Karlsson and all these other guys you had on that third line. Like Coyle and Smith and those guys for third line roles, yes, they're inconsistent, but all things considered, pretty solid players in that spot. You look at Lindholm and you look at McAvoy, Grzelcyk, a guy like Zaboral. You have a guy like Swayman who should be even better this year. And again, you add in the fact that you've got a new coach in Montgomery, and regardless of your opinion on the Cassidy situation or what, like, I can absolutely see a situation in which you have an established room, a team that you have maybe a ceiling capped. You have a new voice in there, new systems, and it gives them just a little bit of more of a boost, right? It's kind of like how the Celtics were. You had a good team with Brad Stevens. He moves, you get Ime Udoka, who's a different voice, different systems, and it gets just a little bit more out of them. Like, I could absolutely see that happening. So I think they're going to be a good team. Again, are they a top tier contender? I wouldn't say so. They're in the mix, which is sometimes all it comes down to. But I also think when you look at the rest of the Atlantic, are they like, is there a huge gap between them and like those other teams like ahead of them? Because, all right, Ottawa and Detroit are going to be better. I don't think they're going to leapfrog the Bruins by any means, but all right, you've got Toronto, who great forwards. Their defense has gotten better. Their goaltending is abysmal.
It's worse than last year.
It's Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov are your two goalies. Okay, there's that. You have Tampa, who, once again, a year older. Again, I say that every year as I feel like I'm talking to a wall, though, because, again, Vasilevsky can just go on a heater. But you lose more players. You lose Palat. You have another deep playoff run, which, again, we say this every year, but sooner or later, those things add up in terms of the amount of times you go playing into the middle of June. Eventually, it's going to wear on you. Then you have Florida, who's like kind of the real wild card, where that team should be dangerous, but was it
heavy at the top?
You look at how much went right for that team last year in terms of how many guys broke through. You have Paul Maurice coming in there and tweaking that system. You have Bobrovsky, who knows what you're going to have there. Like, they're a good team again, but are they a juggernaut? Like, it's not like the Bruins are trying to get one last run out of it, but like Colorado's in their division and is just ready to beat them down. And again, it's a story for another day in terms of if Bruins could like go on a run and beat a team like Colorado. We're not having that discussion right now.
No, we are not.
But I think in terms of just going into this year, I think the Bruins are a better team than I think some people are giving them credit for. And again, I think they'll be right in the mix, especially with that top, brass of teams and franchises in the Atlantic Division.
I don't think we have been underrating the Bruins. I think other people have. I think I have them as like third or fourth in the Atlantic. I think that's like a solid place to have them. But I was going to mention more the Atlantic because I do think the Bruins have their own roster questions, right? David Krejci's coming back after a year out of the NHL. Where's he at? I don't expect like a big drop off, but it's a question that you have. You're missing Brad Marchand and Charlie McAvoy to begin the year. Those are big losses, right? How are they going to respond during that time? I consider those to be sort of wild card questions, but I really look at the Atlantic because, as you said, like no one's talking about the fact that the Maple Leafs have deli meat in net. And they have, again, they're the Leafs. They're the Leafs. They just can never quite figure out how to actually get past the first round. You also, again, look at, I'm not going to rehash everything you just said, but Tampa and Florida. Florida's the big one. I think Florida's you look at that decor, look at that depth chart. Look at that depth chart and tell me if you think that team is going to go on a run or have sustained success over the season. And then again, in net with Bobrovsky and Spencer Knight, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but he was fairly average last year. If memory serves, he did not take the leap that they hoped he would. Again, surprised they never dealt him because it's a very Florida thing to do to, just grab some beginning of the year. But you even mentioned like last year, like every Panther just going off. Like remember Mason Marchment had, what was it over? Like 50 points.
Even more. He was on like a 65-point pace for a while there. I mean, you look at all those guys. Sam Bennett made a crazy jump. Like they had so many guys who, Sam Reinhart. Like again, it's a talented team, and like even if they got 75% of the output they got last year in terms of those secondary guys, they're still going to be very good. But I can't see, unless they hit on every single guy like that, of that team repeating that same amount of success you saw last year. They're going to be good. They're going to be a pain in the ass to play against, especially with a guy like Kachuk in there now. But you look at that decor, you look at even like Paul Maurice and what his system is and how that fits with like kind of a run and gun offense that, Brunette kind of instilled last year. And again, they're fun to watch, but you get to the playoffs, what happened? They got ground to a pulp by Tampa Bay, right?
And they struggle with Washington. Yeah,
exactly. So again, they're a team that I imagine it's going to be a war when they play the Bruins in the regular season, but that's a team that still, you go to the playoffs, you're like, can I get over the hump? Again, good teams do that. You make this case that Tampa was a team that had that label of, all right, they're super skilled. Can they get past it? Then you know what? They ended up being a team that's kind of built for playoff hockey. You saw how they kind of wore out teams over 7-game series, and that's a legit championship pedigree team. And again, they're going to be tough this year again with that same core in place. But I just think when you look at the Bruins and where they are with the way the roster is, I don't think there's a massive gap between them and these teams that have kind of been crowned as the top, tier talent in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, because the odds came out recently, I believe, for the division. I'm pulling them up on my phone now. You just reminded me of them. And I believe the Maple Leafs were number one. The Maple Leafs are number one at 107.5. Again, these are over-unders, so this is not like, I'm not saying that they're going to get 107.5 points. 107.5. Panthers came in at 105.5. Lightning at 103.5. Bruins at 95.5. Then the Senators at 86.5. So again, I mean, that's a high total for the Leafs. Again, good regular season team. Maybe they can, kind of hold goaltending together with, sticks and glue. But I don't know. Again, the Atlantic Division is more wide open, I think, than most people think it is. But
right.
Anyways, Connor, that is this episode of Poke the Bear. What can people look forward to from you over at Boston Sports Journal? What can people look forward to from you?
Yeah, I think we have still going into the final stretch of the off season. We'll still have a little bit more day-to-day content in terms of getting ready for camp. We'll go through all of the roster battles. All that stuff will be over at BSJ. So please subscribe at bostonsportsjournal.com. Want to follow me on Twitter? Do that at ConorRyan_93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Puck the Bear. Have a great rest of your day.